Hi, everybody. Cal Griffin here. Uh, Let me do my disclaimer and we'll get back on with the conversation. Uh, this disclaimer is to say that don't acknowledge anything that is hot topic, hot button, anything political, ideology, an ideology that might stir controversy, and that if you are a guest and asked to refrain or cease the topic, you continue, you will be locked out of the room without warning. And that also we try to very much try to steer away from religious topics. And that anything that's going to be very specific to anything other than what the chosen topics are that I have chosen. That might be biased, but it's my podcast. So from there, we continue. In the Buddhist culture or practice, that about letting things go, okay? And about the rock garden, that people go out there with a rake and they make designs, and you were telling me that.
And the purpose of it is for its fate.
Yeah, okay.
But it also, it's a representation of what is found in nature. So they'll use like larger stones to represent mountains, and they'll use like the designs in the sand or the rocks to imitate the look of rivers and such, and create these designs with it.
All right. So what we're looking at here then is you're using the natural elements or products, rocks, whatnot, trees, whatever, bushes.
It's basically a representation of things found in life and life itself, because you're putting together your life, you're putting all this together, you're enjoying the beauty of it while it lasts, but one day this artwork will fade.
Right. See, with me in my thinking on occasion, and I'll admit I kind of get a bit dark in my thinking on occasion, though I see what you're talking about there, is if I've spent 7 days and some guy, some schmo comes cruising through my garden. I've spent 7 days out in 105-degree weather and trumps through that garden. You know, I'm liable to get a slingshot with a little rock, because I just spent 7 days out there busting my ass in this garden, making this killer design, and some schmo trumps through my design. Okay. Now, in the Buddhist philosophy here, we're supposed to kind of let it go, right? Because things change.
Well, that doesn't mean that you're not addressing the situation.
Okay.
And also, after the situation's over, is the practice of letting go and not holding on to things like that resentment, or the things that we're holding on to so much that we're having issues letting go of.
Okay, but wouldn't that be a bit passive?
Would it?
Well, okay.
I mean, you could still be having the person face some sort of consequences for their actions.
Yeah, but you're supposed to let it go.
Okay. It depends on, like, eventually you will let it go, but it's like not something to be holding on to this whole life as something as like, oh man, I'm just so like angry with this person. Like, years later because they messed up my
So,
rock.
okay, so are we talking about holding on to the resentment?
No,
But if you hold on to it, wouldn't that be a built resentment?
it would be, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we're talking about how to alleviate or reduce and
So,
alleviate self.
purpose of letting go is to alleviate our own suffering, because in that, in Buddhist thought, there are three poisons that can lead to our own suffering. One is hatred, another one is delusion, and there's like a third one that I can't remember. But a lot of it has to do with like holding on to things that no longer serve us.
I think that would be a get off my lawn moment. Just get off my lawn.
I can think of Tao as being that angry old man that's going out with the garden hose, spraying the kids down, messing with his rock.
I got a big old fire truck out there with a fire hose ready to blast little kids off my lawn.
Comes out with like this.
Big weeds.
Comes out with this really powerful water gun that just hurts when you get up with it, and it's like, get off my lawn, sprays down with water.
Yeah, right. See, I'm from Texas, so we got this thing about people crossing our lawns, okay, because people have been known to be dumb with their cars and go into people's lawns, right? And end up digging up somebody else's lawn. They thought it was funny. But with this, and I can see, hey, somebody get really angry about that. But with the rock garden, I can see also where, okay, it can be redone, but yet it is flexible in its application. Okay. And over time, yes, it's going to change. Wind, the weather, the elements are going to change it. So
it is a representation of our acceptance of change in life, and that things do not last forever, but we can still look to the beauty of it and just appreciate the beauty of life and the value also found in it's not going to be here forever, but it's beautiful while it's here.
Right. Yeah. And none of us are going to be here forever. Right. And even though we would like to think so, but then again, if we were all still here, 200 years down the road, would be like an overpopulation thing. So things do change. And with that, yeah, all things be as they may, things do change, things do go on. And unfortunate events do happen. But as in the natural process and natural selection. But with it, let's look at the irony of it. Okay. We were talking about this old Alanis Morissette song. Isn't it ironic? Where there's a line, I think it says, you need a knife and all you have is a spoon. I think that's the line. I'll have to listen to it. But I think that's the irony of these things. And you were asking me, what does irony mean? I think it's unfortunate events or things that may be unfortunate that really are
making people uncomfortable.
Maybe so, or it's just kind of the chain of events that just naturally occur. Okay. Because let's face it, not all of us are always good with keeping up with our dishes. Okay. So do we count that as something we've been lazy about, or is it just irony itself? And so yes, there are many things going to be eaten with a spoon, but however, how do you cut a steak with a spoon? You know, that's an effort. That's a monumental task. Unless you go out there on your in your workshop and you got a bench grinder and you put an edge on the side of that spoon. Now you got a spoon. You can
Stab the steak with the spoon.
yeah you can cut a steak with a spoon now, right?
You should probably put like something under it so you don't damage your plate.
Yeah, but you've got a damn spoon that's dull, and all you got you've got a steak in front of you, and you've got a spoon. How are you going to cut that steak? You need a knife to cut the steak.
You can
So,
it really hard with the spoon.
okay, yeah, but who wants to cut a New York strip or a porterhouse with a damn spoon?
Maybe you should find some scissors then.
Hey, 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 dear, can I use your scissors that you use for when you're doing your sewing? I need your cloth scissors.
No, don't use sewing scissors. Those aren't supposed to be used for anything but cutting fabric. You missed how you're gonna ruin the scissors.
Hey, you need to check the damn porterhouse. You know what?
Normal to have a pair of kitchen scissors.
You know what? Kitchen scissors get dull. So you know what? I'm gonna grab some sewing scissors, and I'm gonna cut a damn porterhouse with some scissors. I want to have a cut up steak. So
you're going to ruin my scissors that are meant for fabric towel.
It's like, hey, but they're sharp. Oh, you can just get them resharpened again.
No,
you know, get resharpened again.
Once.
So, but still, though, but we're supposed to let it go. It's a materialistic item.
But how? Some fabric scissors are hard to find and expensive.
But we let it go, right?
Are you going to pay to replace my scissors?
You know what? Who cares?
How
Do
dare you?
scissors really matter that much?
They're my grandmother's scissors towel.
So this is personal then.
They're my great grandmother's scissors. They are irreplaceable.
Right? So we've made this from going from the irony of you need a knife to cut a New York strip or a porterhouse steak to grabbing somebody's scissors that were their grandmother's to cut a steak because you ain't got a knife and all you got is a dull spoon. You know, function over fashion here. Practicality. It's a sharp object. But then again, they look pretty silly as hell where you're out there handling the damn steak like it's a damn piece of cloth with some scissors. You know, you talk about defacing a good steak. You know, you're out there flopping around. Your hands are going to be a mess.
You could prune the steak. If they're clean, you can clean them with alcohol, and if they're straight edge pruners, you can just prune the steak.
Well, if they get bit or something, go out there in the workshop or whatever and get a damn hammer. Straighten them out. Or better yet, just get a sawzall. Cut the steak with a sawzall.
Oh, are you one of those people that'll like make their sandwiches with like tools that are meant for carpentry?
You know what? I know, but I'm willing to give it a try. Hey, I need a spackling knife for the mayonnaise. I need to make a podcast one time about just thinking as a guy on the things here. How can you make your kitchen into just purely a workshop? How can you make your kitchen function as a workshop? Who knows? Might sell, right?
Apparently, because you use your countertop for that.
We'll say you use your countertop when you're tenderizing a steak with a hammer. The flat surface, it's hard, right? You're going to beat the hell out of a steak with a tenderizing hammer. Well, better yet, you know what? A 22-ounce Estwing? Yeah. The claw on that hammer? Yeah, that'll tenderize a steak really well. But, so, anyway, I digress. So,
I was just wanting to have fun for this podcast.
I think I'm just kind of wanting to have fun on this today because I was thinking, all right, that in my podcast, I am pretty serious about a lot of things, right? And I've been doing this for about a year now?
Yeah, also, the last episode was the 51st episode.
Yeah, so I think, what I'm thinking here is, yes, touch on topics that are important, right, to the community. Okay. But yet, you got to have fun here. And I think irony is kind of a fun topic, but yet there's I think some of it too goes into thinking about things in another way that might just be damn silly.
I think this in part is trying to get me to understand humor.
Do what?
You trying to get me to understand humor?
Maybe so. Maybe so. That we think about it. Okay, let's go into this workshop kitchen here, right? Okay, you got frozen food, and you got a table saw or a bandsaw. Okay, so you got frozen steak. You fire up a bandsaw or a table saw, you cut the steak in half. Okay. And hope to God you don't lose your fingers in the process.
I think Todd just wants to use his power tools for cooking
I
now.
haven't thought about it like that, but I'm not above it. I've got a sawzall.
Ew.
I'm willing to cut a damn frozen steak with a fucking sawzall.
Is that hygienic?
Yeah, use a blowtorch and heat up the blade and all that, and then clean it off with alcohol. I'll be all right. I think.
Is there going to be any carcinogens in it from cutting wood or something?
Not if it's a fresh blade.
Oh, okay. I guess it makes sense.
Or you clean it up with some WD-40 before you use it on the steak. Oh, that's great. Just get WD-40 on the steak and then cook it.
I don't know what I was thinking.
It'll go down real easy on that one. WD-40, the do-it-all lubricant around the house.
I don't think you want to consume a lubricant.
No, but if you cook it, wouldn't it burn it off?
Do you want to risk that?
You know, I don't know if I would, but on the other hand, it would be like I could just see this in a movie. You know, what is this guy doing? He's got no utensils in his kitchen and he pulls out his damn sawzall. Like, what are you doing? I gotta cut a steak with a sawzall. You cut everything else with it. Why not a steak?
Right, I'm giving Tao ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. But put on the safety goggles and have at it with the sawzall. See, that would be cool though, is you get one of those new brushless motor ones that have like a 24-volt battery in it. You know, lipo ion battery in it. Oh man. The RPM that thing would turn. You got a kid with sticks his fingers and sticks his hands up there, and it gets his fingers in the way. It'd be over in a heartbeat. He'd be losing fingers. Throw that in the stew. We're gonna have stew with this also. You know, have finger stew. So, hey, maybe it's a finger food. You know,
Fish fingers to a whole new level.
yeah. Bread a little finger. Bread a finger up. Hey, why has this got bone in it? I don't know. You know, maybe somebody forgot to clean it out at the factory. I have no idea. So you got no, you know, I got no idea. You know, throw some extra barbecue sauce on it. You won't taste it. But you just pick your teeth with it. You know. But on the other side of it, though, that garden kind of makes me think. All right, here I'm flipping things around here. Keep up. So, but in some of this, how serious
I think
are
in
we?
this, you're also basically giving an example of that enjoyment in life.
Right. So, is it really worth being that serious all the time? Because let's think about it today in society. Okay, and the way things are, everything's too serious and everybody's overly critical about everything, right? Somebody says something, oh, you stepped over the line here, or and people get butthurt over things when people are just saying things that are just truly honest without being biased. Okay, they're making an obvious observation that is very truthful and honest. And there's too much seriousness going on today. Okay. So, and your point being about things always change. Why should we always be so serious on things that really are not that important? Other than if we think our opinions are, we think that highly of ourselves, that our opinions are really that important, right? So really letting things go and not holding on to them, I will agree. So is it really that important that that schmo comes walking and tromping across my garden I've been working on for 7 days in 105-degree weather? Does it really matter in the grand?
In 105-degree weather.
Do what?
Why are you doing it in 105-degree weather?
Heat tolerance? Maybe you want to get a tan?
I think that's a personal decision, and
But you're taking your life into your own hands.
that sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
Believe me, 105 degrees outside is very uncomfortable. When I was doing construction, we had a cutoff limit on the temperature. Okay. If it got above a certain temperature, we would call it for the day. We called it, I think, what is it? Banker's hours. Okay. Where if it got up past 95 or up around the dangerous levels, we would call it, because you're actually, when you're outside working, your body temperature is going to go up anyway. Okay. And so you're building heat. And then also, when it's 105, okay, in a way, the body does start to deteriorate. Mentally, you will start to deteriorate. Now, granted, people do acclimate to this temperature. All right. If they're in it day in, day out, and that's part of where you live, like in Afghanistan or the desert areas, okay, that's a normal thing. 105 in the shade, right? But if that's not where we're normally used to living, then yeah, that can be dangerous to a person. All right. And especially if you're not used to it, you're asking for a trip to the hospital. Okay. And you can basically overheat yourself and have a heat stroke and, heat exhaustion, stuff like that. And that's no fun. I've experienced it. And it does take a toll on a person after a couple of times, where your heat tolerance just is not there as much. And so experience does teach us things. Unfortunately, sometimes there's greater consequences to those things that you really don't want to experience, but sometimes you just don't think about it either. But with all this being said, I think that letting things go is important to us. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about being completely passive and just going with the flow like a flower child who's whacked out on LSD or just high. Okay. Where it's like, hey, it's all good, man. Hey, don't worry about it. It's just all out of love. Well, I think there's a point of being overly passive, along with, hey, there is a limit. Let's have respect here in this. Okay. And I think humor is one of the greatest forms of medicine. That's why on some of this, I'm kind of thinking in a silly way. And I was thinking maybe I'm going to be sarcastic in this, but who knows? But on the other side of it, now that I'm thinking here about some of this, that I think that the philosophy of the Eastern ways might be something to seriously consider. That if we do practice that rule, that universal truth, things do change. The universe is ever changing. Maybe it's time we step back and look into this. Maybe we step back and look into how disrespectful is it that we're actually being to one another. And yeah, I'm getting a little serious here, sure. But on the other side of it, I think if we can find the humor and irony and some things that are serious, maybe there wouldn't be as many heart attacks, you know? Um, Maybe heartburn, indigestion, maybe having a bad taco from Taco Bell might not be such a big thing after all. So I'm thinking that maybe there is good at laughing at maybe some really bad stuff. And maybe, as the Joker said in Batman, why so serious? Classic movie, by the way, classic. Heath Ledger was classic in that, one of his best. But yet, let's take example. And some people, and I don't know if you understand this whole thing about, Ozzy Osbourne just passed away. Okay, this last week. Unfortunate, and that it has in a way surprised a lot of people. And one of the things that people laugh about now is that in a was something that turned out that was supposed to be a prank. It had to do with a bat. Okay, that ended up that he was handed a live bat, a real bat, and he thought it was a rubber bat, and he was going to bite the head off the bat. Well, he ended up biting the head off the bat, all right. But and it was supposed to be a prank with a rubber bat. And so, we think about this man that, let's face it, he would pull some outlandish things. And I don't think all of them were quite thought all the way through. But yet, that's just what made Ozzy Osbourne Ozzy Osbourne. Now, granted, I don't think the guy was always coherent in not being affected by some kind of chemical, whatever, alcohol, or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. I think a lot of it is that the impact he had on people. Yeah, I was listening to a radio station the other day, and what is his name? Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins. With an interview that was going on. And he was talking, I think it was him that was talking about the voice of Ozzy Osbourne when he was singing. How many people it reached. And I know I'm jumping around a bit on this today, but that's okay. But he was saying that Ozzy Osbourne's voice and his songs, and maybe some of the messages in his songs, reached so many people. I know that when I heard of the passing of Ozzy Osbourne, I was actually floored. He just got through with a tour with Black Sabbath. Every one of them got together. They got back together for the actual final goodbye. And normally I don't get affected by famous people and artists, okay? Because we live different lives. And so who am I to them and who are they to me, actually? But yet, it was like when Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away, when he was killed. And I was going through my stint of sobriety and in the program for a bit, okay? And Stevie Ray Vaughan's, so there was a bit of relating there. And it was like, wow, this guy who fought off death came around and was a very good, accomplished musician, could play a guitar like nobody's business, right? And his influences were from Jimi Hendrix and maybe other people. So, but when Ozzy Osbourne, when that news came out and I was driving, I was speechless. And I saw it on the news. I saw it on like YouTube or things like this. And I even double checked, is Ozzy Osbourne still alive? Yes, reports are false, stuff like that. But then it was announced over the radio. Unfortunately, Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. And his family has requested respect their wishes and leave them in peace and through this time of mourning. And like I said, I was blown away by this. And I can normally say a lot about a lot of things, whether they're founded, whether they're not, maybe they're in general or my own opinions. And some of them very cynical, some of them very critical, and even condescending and all the such. But this one, in a way, I don't know if I really still know what to make of it. Because I was in high school when I first heard of Ozzy Osbourne, and that was when I was a freshman, and that was in '84. Okay. No, wait. I graduated in '86, so 1982, right? So, and I heard Crazy Train. I'm like, oh my God, Randy Rhoads, all that. And then later on, I found out who Randy Rhoads was. And I'm like, oh my God, this kid, early 20s, who could rip on a guitar, just a beyond and his style was ahead of its time. And that the chemistry between Ozzy Osbourne and Randy Rhoads, and that when Randy Rhoads was killed in a plane crash from the pilot joyriding in a plane, he got too low and hit the bus, killed Randy Rhoads and the pilot. Devastated Ozzy Osbourne. And I wasn't sure quite what the deal was until I saw the documentary on it. And as stupid as that pilot was, showing off like that, putting somebody else's life in your hands, and you end up hitting a bus. How dumb can you be? And of course, people paid the ultimate price through no fault of their own. But Ozzy Osbourne passing, the effect it has had on so many people. And as I said, I'm normally not affected by famous people like this. It didn't occur. But yet, we're talking about humor. Going to the bat, biting off the head of the bat incident, where there's this meme, and I might go to hell for this one. And I might catch hell for this. But there's this meme that's out where Ozzy Osbourne is standing next to Jesus holding a dove. And Jesus is going, "Don't do it." I'm like, too soon, but funny as hell. And then there's somebody else put a meme out where every bat in the world is smoking a cigarette. I'm like, when I saw that, I replied to the guys like, "Look, I want to slap you, but I want to laugh at the same time I'm slapping the back of your head." You know? So it's like too soon again. But still, I think going back to the humor in this, where some things, and there are going to be people that are probably going to be mad over those, and I I hold no judgment one way or another, but I thought there was some funny. I thought there was some real humor in this, and life will go on, and the world of rock and roll will be different completely. And Ozzy Osbourne will be missed. And I feel for his family that, but I also think the band that has gathered up over time, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Ozzy, Neil Peart, the legend, Ronnie James Dio. And there's a couple of others that are slipping my mind right now. But I was thinking and talking to somebody else about this the other day. How iconic, wherever they are, and depending on your faith and practices, you're going to put them wherever they may be. But I think in a way, the universe has the ultimate say. And yes, there is something to be said about letting things go. And that change does happen. And it's important to us, I think, that we do allow that change to happen and we let go of some of our own old ideas. and our own judgments about these things, right? Irony. And because let's face it, some of the things that happen to us, we ask for it, right? By our own choices. And I think we should acknowledge that and be able to laugh at ourselves. Because I've pulled some pretty bonehead things in my life. Here I am, I'm almost 60 years old. And I mountain bike. Every time I get on that mountain bike, and I might feel like I'm 25 or 30 years old at some point, and I end up doing something really dumb, and I land on the rocks, and because I crashed. Who can I blame for that? Me? Of course, it's going to hurt like hell. But the fun that could be had during it. So I have to laugh at myself. And I've done some pretty bonehead things on a mountain bike, and I laugh at it, and I laugh at others because it's relatable. And I think in a way too, where my point might be on this is what is relatable to all of us that we can laugh at. After all, that's what comedians make their living doing. Making statements and punchlines from things that we can all relate to. Reality, you can't laugh at reality. What can you really laugh at? And that what's disappointing is how much things have taken a turn for things being overly serious and people being overly sensitive. When I was growing up, me being a Gen Xer, one of the things that, in our opinion, says that we're one of the greatest generations around and alive still, most of us are, is that we lived to the side of the extreme during that time when we were growing up. And life was good. Life was fun. And we could go out, trash ourselves out on a happy hour, get up, still like hungover, still half loaded, go to work, and do it all over again. And we look back on that as fond memories. And sometimes we may not even remember what happened that night and who it was with, but that's okay. And we did do some pretty crazy things, and we laugh about it. Going, oh man, I would not do it for the world now. And I paid the price by feeling like hell the next day. But yet we can all look back at that and laugh at ourselves. Laugh at the stupidity we had. And the things we did. And giving life the middle finger. And we would settle things face to face instead of taking things so personal and spreading it all out there on the internet and being that passive aggressive, wimp, we would deal with the person face to face. Go, hey man, what's the deal here? Depending on who we are, we'd knock the hell out of each other a few times, get up, and a year later, we're the best of friends, and we sit back and we turn around and look at each other. Hey man, remember when we did this? Yeah, we laugh about it, and we respected each other because we did deal with it. So life does change. Things do change. You know, the garden. I think says more than we might give it granted for. And we might just take it for granted too much. Things do change. Life happens. Life does change. It is a hard universal truth. And, but yet, when we get old and we're sitting hopefully on the front porch someplace in a rocking chair with the person we love or the family we love, everybody can sit back and going, hey, remember when we did this? How much fun we had? And you're smiling. You may have forgotten to put your dentures back in your face. Wake up. Maybe you're drinking a cup of coffee or whatever. Or maybe you're like Willie Nelson, and you might wake up and have a little of the natural herbage that kind of takes the edge off things, right? But yet, it's really all of this that serious, and should we take it that serious? And but then again, too, being too passive, I think, also does minimize the respect and consideration of others. Okay. And this podcast might go a little long today because I've got a lot of things that I'm unpacking here, and I'm just putting out, and maybe things to think about. So this makes me wonder, with the world changing and we as a people have changed. Maybe it's time to go back to a place where things wouldn't be so serious. And that maybe all these things that people have gotten bent out of shape over and wrapped around the axle and gotten their panties in a wad. Why don't you sit back and think about how you were before all this happened? Were you one of those types of people that really didn't take things that personal, and then somebody sold you a bill of goods? As they used to say, the old phrase goes, a pig in a poke. And maybe somehow you fell into this thought process that changed you fundamentally from who you really are? And maybe you're angry because you missed that person you really were. And normally, when I say something like that, I am taking pokes at people and situations, but not today. I'm going to give that a rest for another day. And believe me, I have some grievances, but we're not going to do that today. And that maybe the choices that have been made are you just being angry at yourself and you don't know how to get back. Things change, the universe changes. Just walk away. Is it worth holding on to that long? And are you truly happy for your cause? And I think Gen Xers, we have this way of going, I might catch a strike on this. And if I do, oh, okay, I'll take a strike. But I've seen other content creators use this, but it's kind of like, I don't give a fuck. Okay. But yet there is something to be said about having that thought. And I'm going to justify this that not giving that is, I'm not going to burden myself with it. I'm not going to waste energy over it. I'm not going to let it ruin my day. Because if you don't give enough about it, it's not worth the paper it was written on. So, guys, I know I went a little on the serious side here, but I think it's not so serious. Everybody step back, take a breath. Laugh about those silly, stupid things. Think of the irony and the humor we find in those things that may be unfortunate. And yet, sometimes just evaluating everything and going, is it worth all this? I'm getting heartburn today. I don't need to worry about all this. And maybe it's because you're just worrying about too much. So I'm still all right I'm still broaching close to time because I think I'm winding down here. Try not to look so much into things. Try not to overthink and be so cynical. And what does this actually mean? Does it really matter that much? Is it worth figuring out and spending the time of day when you could be maybe doing something else and just not worrying about what does this actually mean? Is it that important? On a relatable way with other people, sure, yeah. But we all have our own way, right? We've all got those things that we all find funny. Don't take things so serious. As the wise words of the Joker. I'm going to leave you with this. Why so serious? Anyway, guys, have a good one. Cal Griffin out. Thank you.